Hey guys, we're about to go live in the permanent weight loss community. It is Thursday at noon. Give me just 2 seconds to finalize setting this all up. And we'll just press the button to sync up with Facebook. It's fetching the stream. So today we got a lot of fun stuff to go over, all right? So we're gonna start in 3, 2, 1. Hang on one sec. All right, we're gonna go up in 3, 2, 1. Hey everybody, welcome to our weekly call here in the permanent weight loss community. I'm Pete Weintraub. I'm a permanent weight loss specialist. I'm the founder of this community, and today we've got quite a few questions. So just so you guys know, if you're new to the group, we're going to be doing one of these calls every Thursday at noon Eastern Standard Time, where we're going to take your questions as group members, and I'll answer them kind of one by one based upon when I receive them. And I will be checking sporadically for the comments in this section. So if you didn't get a chance to get a question in, no worries. I'll be here to help you out. Let me just plug in my computer really quickly. The battery does drain quite a bit. I'm just warning you guys, I do every week, but in case you're new again, I do use a software program. It enables me to show your questions and to everybody else so they can read along and understand what's going on. So while that is happening, I'm going to come back. So I'm going to ask for some patience. If you're coming into the live stream and you want to ask a question, I will get to it. I'm going to answer the questions that were posed to me first by other members of the community earlier today and late yesterday when I posted first about this. So the first question we have today, we actually have 3 from him today, is BJ. So BJ's first question is, what do I need to know about which peanut butter to pick since I eat it like a death row inmate? All right, so there's a couple of things about peanut butter, BJ, that I want to point out here. So peanut butter or peanuts in general are not actually tree nuts. So tree nuts are part of that sentence that I tell you guys. In fact, we're going to talk about that sentence a little bit later because Sue asked a question about that, which we'll be getting to. But moral of the story here, BJ, is that we want to eat raw nuts and seeds. And by nuts, we mean tree nuts. Peanuts are not nuts. Peanuts are actually legumes, which is a kind of bean. And they're actually a pretty starchy legume at that. So when you're eating peanut butter, yes, it is high in fat, but it also does have a starch component. It does elicit quite an insulin response. Whereas if you're having more of a traditional nut butter, like an almond butter or even a cashew butter to a certain extent, you got to watch cashew butter a little more than you watch almond butter, you'll be in much better shape in that regard. So if you want to stick with peanut butter, BJ, first I'd recommend you go organic. I always recommend you go organic. I don't care what you're eating or where you are. Yes, depending on what you're eating, certain guidelines will show that conventional versus organic, there really isn't much of a difference, but I always like to be better safe than sorry. When you're eating nuts and seeds and they're not organic, there's a chance that they were sprayed with herbicides and pesticides when they were being prepared. This is not something you really want to be ingesting, because while you're trying to do some good by eating a conceivably good quality type food, you might be unintentionally ingesting toxins at the same time. So I would recommend first, BJ, if you can, switch to a tree nut butter like almond butter. I'd recommend almond butter first, and preferably, God, I can't speak today, an organic variety. But if you want to stick with peanut butter, go organic, and then just make sure, look at the ingredients, make sure there's nothing really added to it. So the best peanut butters or tree nut butters or any type of nut butter really is the ones that just says the only ingredient is organic, blah, 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 organic peanut butters or peanut butter, and that's it. And if that's the only ingredient, organic peanuts, I should say, organic almonds, organic cashews. If that's the only ingredient, maybe with some sea salt, that's fine. If you start seeing added sugar, if you start seeing some processed chemicals, certain types of oils, then you probably want to stay away from it. A lot of those oils are vegetable oils or polyunsaturated fats. And as a group that I'm in, a paid group that we're reading a book right now called The Big Fat Surprise, talks about ad nauseum, actually, but it's true. When you use a polyunsaturated fat, which is comprised in much of the processed foods that we ingest, it is heated during the processing of that particular foodstuff. And when that happens, it hydrogenates, the chemical composition changes, and it goes from being a polyunsaturated fat, which has not been linked to many nice things for the human body, to a trans fat, which is linked to even worse things for the human body. So you want to make sure that it's devoid of like palm oil or vegetable oils of any type. So I'd stay away from Skippy and Jif and all those very conventional beans of peanut butter. If you're going to have peanut butter, again, organic peanut butter, look at the ingredients. Make sure that the only ingredients are organic peanuts, maybe some sea salt. You don't want added sugar, you don't want processed chemicals, and you don't want vegetable oils in the ingredient list. And again, if you can make the switch, BJ, I would definitely recommend you go from peanut butter to a more traditional nut butter. All right? So that's number one. Question number two, also from BJ, is where does soy milk rate compared to nuts or to nut milks, or regular milk? So by nut milks, he means almond milk, cashew milk, and things like that. So I think the hierarchy is pretty simple. I think the worst of the three, so starting from the bottom, then we'll work towards the best, is soy milk. And soy has been linked to cancer in women. It is not, especially in the mass quantities that it's cultivated, it is not very conducive to health. I know we were fed all that BS in the 80s and 90s that soy milk and soy products are so healthy for us. No, that's not true. It doesn't matter if it's organic or not. It's not something that I would personally ingest. I've done enough research on it. I've seen enough case studies and, bad findings that I don't want to touch it. Especially if you're a woman, you don't want to touch soy milk. You don't want to touch soy products in general. Stay away. Stay away. Like literally stay away. Next on the list, I would say would be regular milk. And that would be just dairy milk from cows. And if you're going to have cow milk, I would recommend you get organic cow milk. And again, the reason for that is that the cows that are being used to milk during the processing of the milk, they are often fed with antibiotics and hormones in conventional settings, and also they're treated like complete and utter shit. I mean, I know there are plenty of organic farms worldwide that also treat their animals like shit. They just have the organic standard and paid extra and went through all the BS to be deemed an organic farm. But it's not as prevalent in the organic community, and the chances of there being antibiotics, hormones, and other trace elements of things you don't want in your milk will be there. Another thing to consider, BJ, with regular milk is you want to go whole. The reason you want to go with whole milk instead of 2% or skim or fat-free is because the only nutritious part of cow milk is the dietary fat. If you're getting a skim milk or a reduced fat milk like a 2% or a 1% or something like that, then it's often you got to take out the fat, but you got to replace that taste. And what replaces that taste more often than not in milk and in just about every other type of food or beverage? It is sugar. So there will be even more sugar in reduced fat milk than there is in whole fat milk. And there's still a good amount of sugar. There's 16 grams of sugar for every cup of whole fat milk. So I wouldn't recommend, especially if you're looking to lose weight. And even in general, you can drink too much milk, certainly. So I would try and stay away from regular milk as well. But if you had to choose between soy milk or regular milk, go with regular milk, preferably organic whole milk versus anything else. I do think the best types of milks you can ingest out there are nut milks, more specifically almond milk and cashew milk. Now you got to be careful here because you got to look at the ingredients. Again, there aren't really any, I think there might be one actually, organic almond milk. There's not too many organic nut milks in general, so that's one thing you got to deal with. But secondarily, a lot of them have artificial colorings, flavorings, sweeteners in there, like almond vanilla milk. Often that's pretty artificial, that's pretty processed, and that's probably no better for you than drinking reduced fat, regular conventional milk or soy milk. But if you're getting like a cashew milk or an almond milk and there's pretty much nothing in there, it's just like cashews, almonds, water. I know they use different binding processes, xanthan gum. And xanthan gum, the worst thing I've seen that has come out of ingesting xanthan gum as an emulsifier, which is what gives it that like milky texture when you're drinking a nut milk, is just maybe a little bit of bloating and digestion, but nothing that's going to kill you, certainly nothing that's going to harm you. So I would say that on the hierarchy, again, soy milk's at the bottom. Stay away from that at all costs. If you're going to drink regular milk, get an organic milk, get whole milk as well. Stay away from reduced fat. Try and stay away from conventional milk. And keep in mind, though, with regular cow milk, I shouldn't say regular milk because there's also goat milk and other types, but regular milk is high in sugar, right? So if you're going to drink organic whole milk, there's still 16 grams of sugar per cup. That's a lot. You get a reduced variety, there's even more sugar because they're taking out the fat and they need to replace the taste, and the way that they do that is through the means of sugar. And then with nut milks, make sure that it's an unsweetened variety too. That's another thing I didn't point out before. A lot of nut milks are sweetened because let's face it, grinding up a bunch of almonds, grinding up a bunch of cashews, mixing it with water, it doesn't taste all that great. So they need to sweeten it in some way. So there are some that are sweetened with stevia, there are some that maybe they have a little sugar or not too much, but stay away from unsweetened. And if pretty much the ingredients are ground up almonds or cashews, water, and some xanthan gum as an emulsifier, that's fine. So I would stick with that. I forget the name of the brand that I personally use. I even have it in the fridge here, but I'm connected here through the mic, so that would kind of undo this whole thing. Otherwise, I'd look for you right now. But yeah, so that would be the hierarchy. So again, to finish that off, soy milk, regular milk, nut milk. All right, so that would be my 3. So then BJ's final question, and then we have Mike coming up next, is he said that he's hit a plateau where his body rejects going lower than about the 210 to 212 range and immediately gains like 3 to 5 pounds no matter what. How can he blast through that rejection of more weight loss? Okay, so I got some more clarification from BJ after this because obviously, people plateau for different reasons. We had, I believe it was Essence a few weeks ago, who had plateaued. She was a vegetarian, and I told her she had to up her dietary fat content and lower her carbs. And there were ways to do that even when you're eating a vegetarian diet, and she saw great results. So Essence, actually, if you're watching this or you watch that at a different time, then definitely check in with us in the comments and let us know how you're doing. But BJ, getting back to your question, I got some more clarification on what you'd been doing. And you said that you hit your plateau when a health scare made you stop lifting 6 days a week. So you've been lifting weights. He's more at like 3 to 4 now. So there's been a reduction in physical activity, I'm assuming. And then he slipped a little bit in diet, but nothing crazy. All right. So obviously, there's a principle called the SAID principle. And I forget, SAID's an acronym, SAID. And basically, the whole premise of it is that your body adapts to the demands being placed on it. And the very common indicator that they use for that, or example, I should say, is of male men, male women, or if you're from another part of the world, maybe they call them post-men or post-women. So their whole job consists, they're driving around, but most of the time, once they get to their neighborhoods or their city blocks, wherever they work, they're carrying these huge bags full of envelopes and mail and small boxes. Sometimes they're carrying large boxes from their trucks to the front doors of different homes. They get quite a workout. They walk many, many miles a day, and they're very active throughout their work days. And yet, if you look around, at least here in the United States, I don't see too many lean male men or male women very often. And the reason for that is that their bodies have adapted to the demands of their job. They've been doing that job long enough. Their bodies have adapted to the demands of it, and thus they're not really going to be able to lose much more weight unless they focus more on diet or they add in even more physical activity. So for you, BJ, in this case, I think a couple of things have happened. I think number one, you're used to exercising a certain way for 6 days a week, and now you've reduced that in almost half. that's probably one thing. You've probably lowered your metabolism a little bit because you were used to revving, 6 days a week, and now it's only 3 or 4. Your body's probably getting used to the 6. It probably needs the 6 to keep you moving in that direction. And because you cut back, that happened. Also, slipping up with your diet, it's crazy, but it's true. If you're really on point and then you slip up, it doesn't take long, especially when there's a reduction in physical activity, it doesn't take long to see the side effects, which in this case is a plateau and maybe a 3 to 5 pound weight gain. So what I recommend, BJ, is A, clean up the diet. We're going to go over what that is in a couple of minutes here when I answer Sue's question. And then I would get back into being active 6 days a week. It doesn't have to be what you were doing. So if the health scare, whatever that was, I hope everything's okay, by the way. If the health scare is what made you kind of cut your physical activity in either half or 2/3, then you were exercising 6 days a week prior to it, then I'd suggest that you find something else to do 6 days a week. So maybe do some yoga, maybe start running a little bit, on an incline and doing intervals. Try something new, but try and get 6 days of physical activity in. And I'm willing to bet you clean up your diet, and if you start moving again 6 days a week, you'll probably start trending back down to where you were when the plateau started, and then you might make a breakthrough and continue to go down. So BJ, I hope I answered all 3 of your questions. If I didn't, again, please leave a comment below. Next up, we have Mike. And Mike asks, or actually just kind of said that he would like to know more about weightlifting for weight loss. And I showed you the whole thread here just so we can have it. So if you're listening, at a later time on my podcast, I'm going to read everything. So I asked him any type of weightlifting specifically, because there's different types of ways to weightlift. There's Olympic weightlifting, there's powerlifting. He said the Smith machine, if possible, dumbbells would be his second choice. I said, and then he said he's just looking to add strength and mobility. And then I don't have the rest of the thread because he added to it after I had prepared the presentation for you guys, but he's looking to add strength and mobility and lose weight, and he said that it's been very difficult for him to do both. So, Mike, I don't know what your routine is per se. I'd have to take a close look at it to give you an 100% accurate answer, but I'm willing to bet because I have a guy, I play softball, you guys know that. I play on a softball team, or several softball teams really, but we still have like a main group of guys that goes from, we have like 2, 3, 4 teams together. And there's a guy who's on most of my teams who's a very nice guy, but he's overweight. He's been overweight for a while. He goes to the gym, and yet this year he gained weight. And now his diet's not great. We've gone out to eat a few times afterwards, and not the best fare that he was ordering. Granted, it was just one meal. I don't know what he eats on a regular basis, but he kept putting on weight, and he became more and more immobile as the season went on. And he just recently came out, and he told me, and he told another guy, because me and another guy run most of these teams, and he said that he was lifting very heavy. He was powerlifting, and he was putting on muscle, but he wasn't really burning fat. So it was a similar situation, and he wasn't sure why. And then luckily, even the guy I run the team with is pretty well versed in fitness and, obviously wanted my opinion. So I gave him some dietary advice, but on the fitness side, there's a few things you need to do. So it sounds like you're probably doing something called hypertrophy training. Hypertrophy training is when you're looking to build muscle. It's a very specific way to do it. You're basically lifting anywhere from 70 to 80% of your 1 rep max is what they call it. So anything you can lift in a certain way one time, and then you're like done. You're burnt out. That's all your body has. So you're lifting 70 to 80% of that for 8 to 12 repetitions, and you're doing anywhere from 3 to 5 sets. It's a very specific physical exchange that needs to occur in order to elicit muscle growth. And a lot of people, you go on bodybuilding.com, a lot of these free workout programs, they all have hypertrophy programs. And if you're a scrawny guy and you don't have much muscle, but you don't have much fat either, it's like a perfect program for you. But obviously, if you're here, that's not really the case. There's probably weight you want to lose. Mike, you said that later on in the thread after I put this show together for everybody. So what I would suggest, Mike, is a few things. So in terms of weightlifting, I would stick with compound lifts. And what are compound lifts? Compound lifts are the basics of weightlifting. They're the most functional exercises. So things like the bench press, things like the back squat, the front squat, military press, or anything from a military shoulder press. So just standing up, whether you have dumbbells, whether you're on the split machine with that bar, whether you have just a free weight barbell and you're pressing overhead. You could do a push press, which is essentially the same thing as what I just said, but you're just dipping your knees a little and using that drive to push it up. You can use a heavier weight then. And there's a push jerk where you're not only bending your knees and using that as your momentum, but you're literally like jumping up and exploding up, so it's more explosive. You can see some of that in the Olympics. Those lifts burn a ton of fat, and they all, for the most part, use almost every part of your body. Like if you think about a squat, yeah, everyone thinks your legs and your butt, but really you're using your core because you got to stabilize, you got to maintain a position, you're working your balancing muscles, you're working just about everything when you're squatting, especially if you're squatting a significant amount of weight. So I would recommend, Mike, that you stick with more compound lifts. Stay away from the isolation exercises like leg extensions, bicep curls, tricep extensions. You don't need that stuff. That's all glam, and yeah, that'll help build muscle, but again, that's not what you're exactly looking to do. You want to add strength. In order to add strength, I would recommend you start doing something called Tabata. Basically, what Tabata is you're doing 8 sets, right? And it takes 4 minutes, so you got to be pretty quick in terms of you're not getting a lot of rest during those 4 minutes. You're doing 20 seconds of work, and you're doing 10 seconds of rest, and you're repeating that 8 times. You can do 8 sets of bench press. You could do 8 sets of 8 different exercises. You could do like bench press, squat, back squat, front squat, shoulder press, and then you could repeat that twice. You can do whatever you can fit into 8 sets, right? It takes 4 minutes, and you're doing as much as you can. You want to maintain your form, but you don't want to stop. So you want to pick a light to moderate weight that you can continue to do at that rate. That will build strength, and that will also build muscular endurance. And that, to me, will lean you out. That'll burn a lot of fat. That'll really get your heart rate elevated, especially if you're utilizing compound functional movements like the 3 I described to you. And you stay away from the isolation BS that honestly, unless you're a bodybuilder or a physique competitor, it really doesn't help anybody to do that. In terms of mobility, Mike, I would not recommend, I would, again, staying with compound functional movements because those actually require mobility. Those actually require you to maintain some semblance of functionality. But on top of that, Mike, I would not recommend you weightlift to maintain mobility. I would recommend you do yoga. And a lot of men, myself included, are very against doing yoga. I remember I used to be a meathead as recently as 6 or 7 years ago. I was a meathead. I went to the gym 4 or 5 days a week. I lifted heavy weight. I power lifted. In fact, I've had quite a few neck and back problems due to the fact that I used to lift really heavy, neglecting my form. Even when I knew what I was doing, I neglected my form because I just wanted to say I benched this, or I deadlifted that, or I squatted that, when in actuality, I wasn't doing it right. I was putting a lot of duress on my joints, and I wasn't even maintaining proper form. So, yeah, that's all fun and good. But I would recommend yoga. And honestly, a great program. I might actually get certified in this later this year, but I don't personally teach yoga. But a great yoga program, which is pretty affordable. He has his own app, and he has DVDs, like at-home DVDs that you can order and use at your leisure if you want, is DDP Yoga. You can look that up, ddpyoganow.com, I believe is what it is. And he has a Facebook page if you want to check it out. Just type in DDP Yoga in the search bar. But that, for me, was great with mobility because I am the least flexible person in the world, and I still see, in just 1 year of doing it, almost exclusively just doing DDP yoga, maybe doing a couple of weightlifting workouts a week in tandem and playing softball, my mobility and flexibility went through the roof. So Mike, I would highly recommend that you do yoga in addition to your strength training. You want to change it up too, right? So you don't want to do the same thing day in, day out and have the same routine. You want to change things up, and you want to do different methods of fitness. Weightlifting may just be one type for you. I definitely, like I said, recommend you do yoga. Maybe there's something else. Maybe you like jogging or walking or hiking or swimming or biking or playing a sport like myself. Whatever it is, find a few things that you actually enjoy doing that are active and go do them, and you'll be much better off. So Mike, I hope I answered your questions adequately. Again, if you have any follow-up questions, just leave them in the comments. I'll see any comment in this group and I'll get back to you as soon as possible. Last question comes from Sue. So Sue asks, olives, beans, dairy, cheese, eggs. Where do these fit in the recommendation to eat meats, seeds, nuts, non-starchy vegetables, low glycemic fruit? Okay, so basically taking my sentence of eat meats, non-starchy vegetables, raw nuts and seeds, and low glycemic fruit. Okay, so let's run through this first. So I'm going to show you this so you guys can keep track of everything, all right? So you're not looking at me, you're looking at what Sue asked specifically. So first, there's olives. Olives are a great choice. Olives are a low glycemic vegetable. I believe they're a vegetable. I don't know if they're vegetable, but I do know they are low glycemic. They're great for reducing inflammation. You get a big thumbs up from me. I personally can't stand them. I think they taste disgusting. But if you like them, great. They're great. They're healthy for you. Go for it. All right. The second thing, beans. And this is the one that is most up in the air. And with beans, it really depends. So there are certain beans, like black beans, that have a low glycemic load and they're moderate glycemic on the glycemic index. So black beans, once in a while, not a big deal. Have half a cup or less, you're good to go. There are others, though, like pinto beans that are high glycemic beans. So those are the two that they have at Chipotle here, here in the States. I know Chipotle is all over the world too now, which is a Mexican restaurant, or Mexican chain, I should say. So those are not the best because they're high glycemic, both in terms of their index rating as well as their load rating. They will jack up your blood sugar, and you don't want to eat those on a regular basis. Again, will they kill you? No. Are they better than, say, eating a grain-based starch like bread, pasta, or rice? Definitely. But I would try and stay away from beans. And if you're going to eat beans, just look up the glycemic index and load. If the glycemic index rating is between 0 to 49, that's good. But don't stop researching it just yet. Then, if the glycemic index rating checks out, then check the glycemic load rating. Is it anywhere from 0 to 10? If it is, it has a low glycemic load. That means it has a very nominal effect on your blood sugar levels, and you can enjoy. All right? So that's beans. Dairy and cheese. I'm going to put dairy and cheese together. All right? So we went over milk before, right? So cow milk. And I'm assuming that's what you mean by dairy. So cow milk, high in sugar. You get organic whole if you're going to have it. But again, 16 grams of sugar in 1 cup. It's a lot of sugar in just a cup. So you want to minimize your ingestion of milk, regardless of whether it's organic whole or not. If it's not organic or whole, you really shouldn't be having it at all, ever. And then from a cheese perspective, you want to get high quality cheeses. So international cheeses are much better than the ones here in the United States. Like Kraft is a very common brand. They have Kraft singles and Kraft cheese. Disgusting. They have different deli meats like boar's head, which are slightly better. But, American cheese is a cheese product. It's not an actual cheese. So you want to stay away from cheese product. Make sure that it's an actual cheese, like mozzarella cheese, Parmesan, ricotta, things like that. If you're getting a cheese like that, make sure it's from a good, reputable brand. Just got to do some research, look up reviews, see if there are any positive, negative articles about them, see what the arguments are. But if you don't have a dairy allergy, then cheese is okay. Cheese is a high-fat, high-protein food. I give you a thumbs up if it's of high quality. I personally can't have cheese because I have a dairy allergy, but that's just me. If you don't have a dairy allergy and you have a high-quality cheese that you like to eat, by all means, continue eating it, Sue. And then lastly, eggs. Unless you have an egg allergy, hell yeah, I am really big on eggs. Eggs are probably the healthiest food you can possibly have. A perfect blend of fat and protein. The yolk is the best part. So a lot of people like to brag about having egg white omelets. Egg white omelets are pretty devoid of nutrition. Yes, it's high in protein, but most of the vitamins, minerals, and healthy cholesterol and all that good stuff, that's in the yolk. So if you're going to eat an egg, eat the whole damn thing. If you're going to scramble it, great. Scramble the yolk in with the whites. If you're going to hard boil eggs, then hard boil it, eat the whole thing. Don't eat around the yolk. All right? So I hope I answered everyone's questions. I'm just looking one more time. There were no comments today. in the group. So I hope I answered all your questions. Again, if you want more clarification on something and you're watching this at a later time, please just comment below. Let me know what you think. For you guys watching at a later time on YouTube or you're listening on my podcast, thanks so much for listening. Don't forget to subscribe. In the comments below, I have a link to my free report. Details the 5 strategies I personally use to lose 100 pounds. And also I'm doing a free private webinar coming up this coming Monday. What's the date on Monday? That date is January 29th at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. If you can't make it, if you're not in my time zone and it's like overnight or early morning and you're at work the next day, that's fine. But you will, if you register, you're going to get a confirmation email. And in that confirmation email, you're going to have direct access to me. I'm going to ask you to email me back and give me your number 1 question. So even if you can't make it, I will answer your question for you on this private webinar. It's just like this call. It's just for you and it's for maybe people outside of this group that haven't had a chance to be exposed to the information and the motivation that I can provide. So if you want to be part of that, that link will be in the comments below if you're watching this on YouTube or listening on iTunes, SoundCloud, and Stitcher. But that's it for this week, guys. So thanks so much for the questions. BJ, Mike, and Sue, they were all great questions. I hope I answered them for you. For everyone else, have a great rest of your Thursday. I'll come back at you Friday on YouTube and through the podcast. Have a good one, everybody.